All right, welcome back to another episode of Road Tripping with Rachel. I'm Rachel, so join me on this road trip. So we have been working our way through the book of Genesis and the Patriarchs, and now we are moving on to Isaac. So as we learned with Abraham, Isaac is considered a child of promise. He is a child that was born to him in his old age, specifically because Sarah was so old. She's well past childbearing years, and we are going to hop into Isaac and take a closer look at Isaac and who he was and how God used him. Now, just as a reminder, as I am going through this, this is not meant to be like some great sermon or treatise or anything like that. It's just meant to kind of get discussion going and be able to encourage you if you are a small group leader, Sunday school leader, life group leader, whatever it is that your church calls it, that you are able to maybe take something away, get you thinking, and maybe use some of these questions and things that we discuss in order to help in the discussion that's happening in your own groups. So we are going to be in Genesis. We are going, as we've already talked about, we've hit on Isaac already in bits and pieces, but we're going to kick off with chapter 24. And this is where Isaac gets his wife. So Isaac and Abraham and Sarah, they've been nomadic all this time. They've been moving around Canaan. And then suddenly Abraham's like, yo, I'm getting old. I'd like to see grandchildren someday. I really think Isaac needs to get married. And I think we should go back to where I'm from, to Haran, and we should get him a wife from, within the general family tree. He's not going to marry a Canaanite woman. So we are going to go ahead and pick up here in verse 6 of 24. So Abraham is having this conversation with one of his servants, and the servant has asked, like, hey, what's more important, getting a wife or bringing him back here? What should I prioritize? Let's get this right. And Abraham opens with, Abraham answered him, make sure that you do not take my son back there. The Lord, the God of heaven, who took me from my father's house and from my native land, who spoke to me and swore to me, I will give this land to your offspring. He will send his angel before you, and you will take a wife for my son from there. If the woman is unwilling to follow you, then you are free from this oath to me, but don't let my son go back there. So the servant placed his hand under his master Abraham's thigh and swore an oath to him concerning this matter. So I'm going to go look for the lady. If I can't find the lady, or she says, hey, I ain't coming, that's on her. God's going to provide no matter what. But Isaac's not going back. The servant took 10 of his master's camels, and with all kinds of his master's good in hand, he went to Aram Naharim, or Nahor's town. At evening, the time when the women went out to draw water, he made the camels kneel beside a well outside the town. Lord, God of my master Abraham, he prayed, make this happen for me today and show kindness to my master Abraham. I am standing here at the spring where the daughters of men of the town are coming out to draw water. Let the girl to whom I say, please lower your water jug so that I may drink, and your spawns drink, and I'll water your camels also. Let her be the one who you have appointed to your servant Isaac. By this I will know that you have shown kindness to my master. Before he finished speaking, there was Rebekah, daughter of Bethuel, son of Milcah, the wife of Abraham's brother Nahor, coming with a jug on her shoulders. Now the girl was very beautiful, a virgin. No man had been intimate with her. She went down to the spring, filled her jug, and came up. When the servant ran to meet her and said, please let me have a little water from your jug, she replied, drink, my lord. She quickly lowered the jug to her hand and gave him a drink. When she had finished giving him a drink, she said, I'll also draw water for your camels until they've had enough to drink, which, this is a side note, a camel will drink roughly a lot. It's a lot, the whole hump on its back thing. So it would go through about easily like 5 gallons of water. I want to say that I was doing the math, and for 10 camels, it would end up being like, the jar she would have used would have been approximately 5 gallons. So like a 5-gallon jug, you see them at Lowe's, Home Depot, that kind of thing. And each camel would drink approximately 5 of those. So 25 gallons is about what they would end up drinking. And there were 10 camels. That's a lot. Because I was flabbergasted at the number of, like, that's just so many. That's just so much water, and that's a lot of work. And that's the point here. That's a lot of work. So this is a special individual who would volunteer to do that. And if she is basically like the granddaughter of the guy who founded this town, like, okay, she's from a relatively important family. I think we can say that. As the camels finished drinking, the man took a gold ring, weighed half a shekel, and on her wrist put 2 bracelets weighing 10 shekels of gold. So I just skipped down to verse 22 there. Whose daughter are you? Please tell me, is there room in your father's house for us to spend the night? And she answered him, I am the daughter of Bethuel, son of Milcah, whom she bore to Nahor. She also said to him, we have plenty of straw and feed and a place to sleep to spend the night. And then the man knelt down and worshipped God. So now I'm going to skip because it's really just a bunch of like interaction between this servant and then like her brother, her father, admiring her newest jewelry. And then we're just going to go and skip on over all the talking and all of that. And we're going to hop on down to verse 61. So this is actually a long chapter. Then Rebekah and her female servant got up, mounted the camels, and followed the man. So the servant took Rebekah and left. Now Isaac was returning from Beer-lahai-roi, for he was living in the Negev region. In the early evening, Isaac went for a walk in the field, and looking up, he saw camels coming. Rebekah looked up, and when she saw Isaac, she got down from her camel and asked the servant, who is that man in the field coming to meet us? The servant answered, it is my master. So she took her veil and covered herself. Then the servant told Isaac everything he had done. And Isaac brought her into the tent of his mother Sarah and took Rebekah as to be his wife. Isaac loved her, and he was comforted after his mother's death. So it's so Isaac got a love match. Isn't that so sweet? Like, love at first sight with this girl, and he falls completely in love at first sight, and she's like ready to go. Like, she's got her wedding veil basically like ready. She's like, hold on, grabs it, it's on top, like she's like, let's go. It's so exciting. So we're going to skip over most of chapter 25 because we're going to eventually come back to it whenever we talk about Jacob. But now we're going to go on ahead and we're going to hop over to chapter 26, and we're going to talk a little bit more specifically about our good friend Isaac. And the biggest thing about Isaac is there's not, realistically, we spend way more time talking about Abraham and we talk about Jacob much more, and that is because kind of the trajectory that their lives take. Like, Abraham is like the patriarch. You know, he leaves his home, he travels around for years, they struggle with infertility. He makes some really stupid mistakes along the way, but at the same time we see him remaining faithful. Then we're going to get into Jacob. Jacob's his own like mess of like dysfunctional family, and Jacob is where like suddenly we see like infertility is no longer an issue. Like, it just kind of explodes more or less. But we're going to take a look through Isaac, and we are going to see that there is a lot that happens with Isaac. So Isaac, as we go through chapter 26, just verses 1 through 12, just to start off with, we see that God's going to reaffirm the promise, and then Isaac's going to start to do some of the stuff his dad did, which it's kind of like, really, did we not learn? But so verse 1, there was another famine in the land in addition to the one that had occurred in Abraham's time, and Isaac went to Abimelech, king of the Philistines. I suspect this is probably a different Abimelech, because Abimelech means like God my father, but not like big G God referring to like Yahweh. It means like just God, like something to be praised. Is my father is Abimelech. So it was a common name because men of power in this day were very narcissistic, and we kind of see the same thing today too. But we just don't go around like proclaiming that's what we think of ourselves anymore. The Lord appeared to him and said, do not go down to Egypt. Live in the land that I tell you. Stay in the land as an alien, and I will be with you and bless you. For I have given all the lands to you and your offspring, and I will confirm the oath that I swore to your father Abraham. I will make your offspring as numerous as the stars of the sky. I will give you offspring of all these lands, and all the nations of the earth will be blessed by your offspring, because Abraham listened to me and kept my mandate, my commandments, my statutes, and my instructions. So Isaac settled in Gerar. So we see a lot of the same language that God used with Abraham, like he's just repeating it. He's affirming it specifically with Isaac, and he's reaffirming what he had talked about with Abraham. And here at the end, where we saw at the tail end of verse 5 that Abraham listened to my mandates, my commandments, my statutes, and my instructions. That's repetition, 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 repetition. Literally, it's just repeating itself, because we will see later on, eventually we'll get to the Psalms, but with the Psalms, we see that is a device, a storytelling device that is used. And it's even one that if you sit through, like if you remember high school classes or your college classes, oftentimes if the professor is repeating something, it's important. And so here, Abraham kept my mandates, his statements, his rules, his law, my commands, my statements, my rules, my laws, my mandates, my statutes, the things I have established, my commands, my mandates, my rules, my laws, and my instructions, my mandates, my rules, my commandments, my statutes, my laws, my rules. That Abraham did all this, and it's being reinforced now with Isaac. Let's continue. When the men of the place asked, because remember, he's here with Abimelech and the Philistines. When the men of the place asked about his wife, he said, "She is my sister." Once again, really, Isaac? Because Abraham did this not once, but twice with Sarah. She is my sister, and so he was afraid to say my wife, thinking the men of this place will kill me on account of Rebecca. So she was a beautiful woman. So compliment to Rebecca, she's incredibly beautiful. And if you consider the fact that she, if we were to backtrack into 25, realize that she's got grown sons, like grown sons. Not youngins, full-grown sons. And her hubby is still saying that, oh, she's absolutely beautiful, enough that he was worried that he was going to be killed because of how pretty she was. Good job, Isaac. He's complimenting his wife. Bad job, Isaac. You lied. When Isaac had been there for some time, Abimelech, king of the Philistines, looked down from the window and was surprised to see Isaac caressing his wife, Rebecca. There are various interpretations of what this means. Caressing, so is it like a gentle touch on the face? Is it a hug? Is it a kiss? Were they doing something else? Who knows? I'm going to probably hunt down a few notes. I'll try and include them or hop on at the end and be able to talk a little bit about some of the notes that I might be able to find on that. But okay, so remember where I was talking about Isaac, and I brought up that when he is with Abimelech, and that I'm pretty sure there are some versions that say something a little bit different than he was caressing his wife. So I did look it up. Just future Rachel is in here letting you know. So I did refer back to the Rational Bible with Dennis Prager, all that. And before anyone says anything, you always refer to him. Okay, I think the best people to explain Torah is people who grew up with it as Torah and have a different view of it than just like American Christianity all the time. So, in his words, the Bible doesn't shy away from human sexuality, and so it is assumed that Isaac and Rebecca were being very lovey-dovey, and we'll leave it there. They were being very lovey-dovey. Abimelech sent for Isaac and said, "So she is really your wife? How could you say she is my sister?" Isaac answered him, "Because I thought I might die on the account of her." Then Abimelech said, "What is it you have done to us? One of the people could easily have slept with your wife, and you would have brought guilt on us." Which, hold on. First off, were you really just sleeping with whoever? This is a side note. Worth talking about if you're in adult class. If for some reason you're a teenager and you found this, I'm sure even you would comment on this. I'm highly doubtful people just walked up and said, "Yo, I want to sleep with you," and they just did. Like, I still have a hard time seeing that might have been something that happened. Now, like, granted, they have a whole lot of different religious practices back during this time that would have made it probably more susceptible. But even if she was his sister, they wouldn't, like, there was still the whole idea of like authority over the women who are in your family. So if she was his sister, they would have asked him, like gone up to him and be like, "Yo, we want her to, be the temple prostitute, or we want her to do so such and such wants to take her as a wife," or hey, like there should have been some form of conversation going on. I don't know all of the cultural like nuances that are involved in this, but that's always just been like, really, how? Like it just happened on accident? I don't get it. What? Okay, I'm moving on. So Abimelech warned all the people, whoever harms this man or his wife will certainly be put to death. Okay, so same situation that we saw happen with Abraham. Then we're going to come down and we're going to look at verses 12 through 22, and once again, issues with wells. People are running around saying like, no, this is my well. No, this is my well. So, and if we look at 17, so Isaac left there and camped in the Gerar Valley and lived there. Isaac reopened the wells that had been dug in the days of his father Abraham, and that the Philistines had stopped up after Abraham died. He gave them the same names his father had given them. Then Isaac's servants dug in the valley and found a well spring water there. But the herdsmen of Gerar quarreled with Isaac's herdsmen and said, the water is ours. So he named the well Esek, because they argued with him. Then he dug another well, and they quarreled over that one also. So he named it Sitnah. He moved from there and dug another well. So we're on well number 3. And they had not quarreled over it. He named it Rehoboth and said, for now the Lord has made space for us, and we will be fruitful in the land. So 3 times. It took 3 times of digging wells before they were finally able to have one, which is a lot of work considering how deep that water would have to be, because it's crazy. So another similarity. And if we had gone through chapter 25, you'd also see that Rebecca and Isaac were actually married for 20 years before they had Jacob and Esau. So Isaac's 40 when him and Rebecca get married, 60 whenever he becomes a father, and then he is 75 whenever Abraham dies. And all this is still going on. And in between, Isaac lies and says, like, yo, my wife's really hot, and I'm going to call her my sister because I don't want people to realize that they might come and kill me, despite the fact that I'm running around with grown children who are also married. And then the Lord appears to Isaac once again. Lord's appeared to Abraham multiple times. Now he's appearing to Isaac multiple times. This is verse 24. I am the God of your father Abraham. Do not be afraid, for I am with you. I will bless you and multiply your offspring because of my servant Abraham. So it's a reiteration of what we had just previously seen. And then he ends up making a covenant with Abimelech. So that's going to be chapter 26, 26 through 33. And now Abimelech came to him from Gerar, and Azuth, his advisor, and Phicol, the commander of his army. Isaac said to them, why have you come to me? You hated me and sent me away from you. They replied, we are clearly seeing how the Lord has been with you. We think that should be an oath between our 2 parties, between you and us. Let us make a covenant with you. You will not harm us, just as you have not harmed you, but you have done only what is good for you, sending you away in peace. You are now blessed by the Lord. So he prepared a banquet for them, and they ate and drank. They got up early in the morning and swore an oath to each other. On that same day, Isaac's servants came to him about the well they had dug, saying to him, we have found water. He called it Sheba. Therefore, the name of the city is still Beersheba today. So we see all of these iterations of how Isaac's life really reflected a lot of Abraham's. Like, they struggled with infertility, lying about who their wife was, calling them the sister, ultimately God blessing them and benefiting them from it, having to make a covenant with the Philistines so that way they would be able to live peacefully in the land, being able to travel around. But the big thing that Isaac did that was completely different from what Abraham did is Isaac was actually more faithful in the respect that he didn't leave where God had placed them. And if we remember, Abraham actually went to Egypt at one point. So Isaac in some aspects was even more faithful than Abraham. And I think Isaac is an excellent example of how there's really nothing new under the sun. Like, no matter how bad it gets, we are not experiencing, and we as a people, as a culture, we don't experience anything that someone else at some other point in history hasn't experienced. Everything, there's nothing new. There's no new sins. There's no new blessings. There are lots of, I have 2 friends who both struggle with infertility, and they've both adopted from that. I've met people now who have lost their spouses. I have friends from high school who have been divorced. I have friends who have lost children now, and I'm only in my early 30s. So they're really, and each story is unique and special and is unique to that individual, but the overall story doesn't change. We all are experiencing things in this life that are the product because we live in a fallen world, and we all experience the consequences of both our sins and then the sins of other people. It's all a part of it. But and that's one thing that we really see here. The other thing that we see is that Isaac never did anything huge. Like, we see the overview of Isaac's life because he didn't live a life that was going to really put him in any history books. I mean, if in some ways Isaac's kind of a footnote for Abraham, like he's the child of promise, but that's really his claim to fame. It's not, he is not the person who left his homeland and came and settled in a land that was foreign to him. Like, he stayed where he grew up. He married from a good family. He experienced the same things like his father did. Isaac is an example of just the consistency that comes, that he had a life that was well lived, but it wasn't a glorious or glamorous life. And I think as a modern 21st century Christian, I think sometimes we think that we want to be those heroes of the faith who are going to go out and be used greatly by God, and people are going to be telling stories about the things that we've done. Like, we want to be Corrie ten Boom and Paul, and we want to be Jim Elliot or Elizabeth Elliot, or we want to be like a William Carey, or we want to be like a Charles Spurgeon or like a John Piper, or we want to be, one of these big names that we all read about and hear about and know of. But realistically, there are a lot of Christians out there today. They're Isaacs. They are living their life day to day, just being faithful and doing what God has called them to do. And it's not glorious. It's not glamorous. It is simply living day to day in faith of what God has promised is going to happen and doing the next right thing that they believe that God is calling them to do, which is caring for their families, caring for the things that God has given into their hands, raising their families, reacting the way they need to react. And we still screw up. Like, Isaac clearly screwed up where Rebecca was concerned and telling people that that was his sister. Clearly screwed up. He didn't learn from past mistakes that his dad made. Hopefully, but then again, what have I done that's very similar to my mother or my dad? We all repeat some of the same mistakes that we see like our parents have created and mistakes they've made, and we learn those lessons, and sometimes we learn those lessons the hard way. But Isaac is important, and he should be an encouragement for the normal everyday Christian, that sometimes God doesn't call us to something that is full of grandeur. Sometimes he really just calls us to be that everyday consistent influence that is in somebody's life that displays who God is in the everyday moments. That's all I've got really on Isaac. I hope you enjoyed this. I really enjoyed reading Isaac, and funny thing, like the church I attend, the pastor there has been working his way through Genesis, and so like I've got my like stuff all planned out, and then like I get to sit through like his sermon. I'm like, that's a good call. I like that. We're gonna look that up and see what I can find too. So hopefully you enjoyed this, and if you did, make sure that you like and subscribe. That helps let me know that you enjoy the content that I'm producing, and hopefully you'll find that this is going to be beneficial for you and for like the group that you're a part of. You can also see more about like what goes on in my life and what I am working on or anything like that by following me on Instagram. So that will be at the end of this video, but make sure to like and subscribe, and I will see you again later. Bye.